welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Sam Solasz, Vice President of Master Purveyors. Hi, Mark. Thanks for being on the show.
Good afternoon.
So you're Master Purveyors. Purveyors of what?
Purveyors of meat.
Purveyors of meat. Okay, I see you're wearing your company logo. Yours is a family-owned business, right? How long in existence?
My dad started the company in 1957.
Right, and your dad was a Holocaust survivor, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, so he's one of those American dream stories. Came over here, a survivor, very little money, and he worked hard and started his own company, which is still now in existence. That's
right.
Right. We call that an American dream.
Well, and he's still living it because he still works every day.
Yeah. In an article I read about you guys, I said he still does the chopped meat every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
And he's very proud of it.
I don't blame him. What goes into chopped meat anyway? You hear all these horror stories.
Well with us, there are no horror stories.
Okay.
We hadn't had a horror story, thank God.
In all
From the
the
day
years?
we opened,
okay.
we've never had one.
Yeah. What makes you guys different?
We still do the meat business the old-fashioned way. My father started the company bringing in fresh cattle from the Eastern Corn Belt, the Midwest, and part of the West Coast. And it was meat that hung on the rails in the truck. And just like what you see hanging in the movie Rocky.
Right.
So our meat comes from the Midwest that way, hang on a truck. And we also bring meat in that's fresh in bins and not in boxes. In the mid-70s, they converted our whole way of doing business in the meat business from fresh meat to box meat, where it was easier to put meat on a truck in a box and bring it to
So somebody else did the butchering.
Right. The processors actually broke it down to smaller parts and then shipped the small parts to the New York area.
What's wrong with doing it that way, Mark?
Well, quality control, number one. They bring a truckload of meat in the small pieces. They bring 2,000 pieces of the same piece on that one truck. So you're getting, let's say, an entire lot of product. Whereas when we bring product in, we only get 100 pieces, cattle, on that truck. So it's selected for us from the slaughterhouse. So it's a little bit more quality control. In addition to that, when something's in a box, you really can't see what's in it.
That's true.
So if we're asked by our customers to send them one piece or two, you have to open a box, you've got to look at each piece, you have to make sure that it's the right piece for your customer, whereas every piece that we get that's fresh is a diamond.
In fact, you have customers that come down to your warehouse and select it themselves.
That's true.
Almost like a consumer goes into a butcher shop.
It's just like that. We have an open door policy. Our customers are allowed to come in. Yeah. They just call and tell us what day they'd like to come, and we have the meat ready for them. Yeah. They can pick their own meat.
With all the emphasis on fresh and local, and as opposed to not knowing what you're getting. I mean, I happen to still, on a personal basis, use a local butcher shop in my neighborhood, but butcher shops are kind of a dying industry.
Unfortunately, yeah. These mass producers come in and they open these big depots, and unfortunately, right now in the economy we're in, people are looking at price.
Right.
But there's still a very, very select portion of our economy, society, that still demands quality.
And that's mostly restaurants.
Restaurants and even consumers. Right. The gourmet butcher shops we still sell to.
Right. I want to do something. This show is Getting Your Money's Worth, and you know what? Maybe maybe there's a point to getting your money's worth out of what I ask you one more time. Prime meat. There are choices when you buy meat. There are qualities, right? Just like there's grades of anything, I suppose.
That's true. There's grades of meat.
So your meat is only prime. Well, prime stands by itself. That means the best, right?
Right. We don't grade the meat. The United States Department of Agriculture grades the meat at the processing plant. And there's basically three grades of meat: prime, which is the top; choice, which is the middle; and select, which is the bottom. We buy the prime meat for our top-end restaurants, the steakhouses in the city and elsewhere about the country, because we do ship.
Yes.
And then we also buy the top choice, because not every customer can afford the prime prices
Right.
of that top grade.
So it's like any other thing, like a prime hotel room and a deluxe hotel room. I mean, you get what you pay for.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. So what is the difference, though? Why should a consumer buy prime over choice or select, Mark?
Well, I look at its quality and consistency.
But is it in taste or in value and nutrition?
Well, there's 5 points of taste that I always tell my customers.
Okay. What are they? Tell us now.
There's tenderness,
Tenderness. Okay.
juiciness,
Juiciness.
palatability.
Palatability. What's palatability?
Well, how it eats in your palate, how long the flavor lasts in your palate, and the texture of it going
Is
down.
that anything like sometimes I don't like something, I don't like a steak if I bite into it, it's mushy.
Right. You get mushy, doesn't have the proper
It
confirmation.
doesn't have, I call it, it lacks a beefy chew.
That's right. That's the palatability.
Okay, good.
Your flavor.
Right.
And did I say?
We stuck, you left us like for the pen. We had taste.
Right.
No.
You had tenderness, juiciness, palatability, flavor, and texture.
And texture. Okay, that would be like the mush or the beefy or something.
Right.
Right.
And what we go for is we always try to explain to a customer that when they're eating a steak, if after the third or fourth chew, it loses its flavor, like a piece of chewing gum.
Yeah.
After 3 or 4 chews, it becomes very plain.
Right.
That's one of the indicators of a good quality piece of meat. Does the flavor last on its way down? Do you come away from that experience
with a good taste in your mouth?
Right. It's got to go in. It's got to go down the same way it came in.
Okay, that's a good explanation. I always want. Okay, and for someone who is, say, a conscious, diet conscious, or calorie conscious, and not eating red meat as often, it's worth it to have a really good prime steak.
Well, I always look at the idea that if you're going to have a piece of steak, piece of beef, you should have the best piece of beef, and just don't eat it as often.
Right, or eat a smaller portion.
A smaller portion.
What is it when you go to steakhouses, Mark? My gosh, they serve such a big steak. What's going on there?
Well, I guess it's so good that people say it's not enough. They want more.
Right.
So what they do is they charge more money, so this way they can provide that size steak, and people can go away with a happy experience. And if they don't finish it, they take it home.
Oh, they take it home, right. Have you ever noticed everybody that eats in a steakhouse has a dog?
Right. I have a dog, Elvis.
Yeah, everybody has a dog. I'll take it home with them. But while you're here, we also, in addition to getting your money's worth, we're going to talk about this. So I have a chart here for you. And since people are most familiar with steaks, what part of the cow does the steak come from?
Okay, well.
The short loin?
We want to say steer.
Oh, steer. I'm sorry. What
it's
part
okay,
of the
because
steer?
cows are girls and steers are boys.
Oh, gee. Thank you for correcting me. And I think before you do this, did you bring me a hat?
I did.
Okay.
We want
to be very gender accurate on this show. Okay. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So, on the steer, what part of the steer do steaks come from?
Okay. In the middle of the steer,
the rib,
short loin, and the tenderloin.
Okay, so let's go. Rib steak is rib steak.
Right.
I happen to love rib steak. Rib steak is a really flavorful steak, right?
Yes.
It's very tender. It's very delicious. But I avoid it sometimes because rib steaks are fatty.
Right. That's the nature.
That's the nature of the beast, right?
And the better quality, you'll find more marbling or more fat that runs intramuscularly in the piece of meat. It means the little speckles of fat you see that runs inside the steak.
Right.
More of that will actually be a better eating experience.
Boy, is that rib steak good.
It is, and I always go for a little fattier because I don't eat it too often.
That's how I decide to do it. But it's like anything else, good and less frequent. Right. Anyway, so that's the rib steak. Now the short loin gives what cut?
The short loin is the porterhouse steaks,
Oh.
T-bone steaks, and shell steaks.
How does somebody know what to order? I'm confused. I mean, I know what a shell looks like, but how does somebody know which cut to order?
Well, if you like the sirloin, which is the shell, you can get a shell steak, which is basically a cut for one person.
Yes.
Then you have T-bones, and a T-bone steak would have a little bit of filet mignon attached on the other side of the sirloin.
So is the T-bone steak a shell steak with a bone?
Yes, and a little filet mignon.
And a little tiny bit of
on the other side.
Okay, good. Okay, fine. And then the
Porterhouse.
porterhouse
Is the last cut of the short loin, right? And that has a bigger piece of the filet mignon. And the difference between the T-bone and the porterhouse is the size of the filet mignon on that.
But they generally have all the same flavor, except filet mignon to me is mushier, softer.
It's more tender.
Yeah.
Right. And a little less flavor.
And a lot less chew.
Right.
And for me, I love beef. As a beef feeder, I like to chew.
Right.
I get satisfaction from that chew.
And that's why, that's what makes a horse race, because some people like the tenderness, some people like the chew.
And some of the and the brisket, which is a very common cut in my house. Where does the brisket come from?
The brisket is in the front part of the steer.
Oh, brisket, right here.
Right.
Oh, it's called brisket.
Right.
Oh, good. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But that brisket, you got to really cut that brisket right, or it's not so. It's delicious if it's cut against the angle, right?
You have to on a bias, and you've got to also cut across the grain. Yeah. We actually break the cattle out, and we sell our briskets, fresh briskets, to a couple of delis.
Oh, yeah?
Special delis in the city.
In the city, right. So tell me something. For folks really that are having some economic time and want to serve steak once in a while to their family, what is there such a thing as the most economical cut to buy?
There are.
And
it all depends on the time of year, because those cuts will fluctuate.
We're coming into holiday time,
Right.
and people say, "Hey, I want to give my family a steak dinner. I want to buy them a rib roast or something fancy." What are the cuts that you can kind of skimp on and still give a hearty steak meal?
So if I can show you, when you talked about the rib steak right now, holiday time, is very expensive, right? And it goes up as we hit Christmas time.
Right.
So we don't really see any relief on prices with rib. And on filet mignon, the tenderloin, that also is a holiday time beef. We don't see relief on that as well. And they started to rise.
So what can we do?
So what you can do is short loin, the shell steak. That's been holding its own, and it really doesn't rise during this time of year. Shell steak is a good cut.
But you can't make a roast out of that, can you?
You can make a shell roast.
A shell roast.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You can make a shell roast and do that.
And can you slice it down like a filet mignon?
You can cut it in like a filet mignon. You can also do an eye round roast, which is in the back end.
I have I have a toughness problem with the eye round roast.
Yes, but you know what? You slice it very thin. It can eat like butter.
Oh,
so
really?
it's how you cut the eye round.
Where can I buy your meat retail in New York City? I want to test it.
Fairway Markets buys prime meat from us. Grace's.
Okay, so the more gourmet.
More gourmet, I can do Valentino.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would tell you something. I think we've given our viewers a good lesson in meats.
Thank you for having me.
And the cuts. And I can't wait to join your meat with probably the most popular side dish in steakhouses, cream spinach.
Right.
Right.
That's right. But you have to wait 3 weeks because it takes 3 weeks for the meat to age.
Oh, right. Not 3 weeks for the cream spinach, but 3 weeks for the meat to age. Right. Okay, thanks. I hope we can have you back again. Thank you
so
very much.
For
Thanks for being on the show. Hi again. Thanks for watching. I'm Judith West, and we've had an interesting and I hope tasteful lesson in meat purveying. Thanks for watching.